Hey folks, so there have been so many. We're gonna retry that. So hey, if anybody decides to watch this, whether it be as a VOD or if I do end up uploading it just as a separate video, I am going to be ranking the movies that came out in 2023. I'm not somebody who watches movies for a living, so I didn't see everything, but I did see a fair few movies, and I mostly tried to limit myself this year to just watching stuff that I actually thought was going to be good. You'll see that's not 100% what ended up happening. There definitely was some bad stuff, some garbage stuff that happened in there, but like there was, for the most part, I think I had a pretty good year with movies, and I'm pretty excited to talk about them. You will notice, however, that a bunch of movies are already on this list here. They're already ranked. I apologize to the one person who saw the stream, or yeah, I guess it might have been a couple of people who saw the stream with the just like garbage audio. I think I figured out what it was. I think it was just I was using one of those like USB splitters, and so I just switched it to being plugged in directly into the computer, and that seemed to fix things. Had a little bit of a panic moment there because I was trying to remember if I had like dropped this microphone or something like that, and that was what was messing it up. But that does not seem to be the case. So to recap on the stuff that has now been privated, I first talked about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I didn't really like it very much. I thought that the sets were or like that it wasn't even sets. The CGI was really, really lame. And I thought that a lot of the characters just were kind of meaningless in there. That said, I did like just some of the ridiculous off the wall stuff that happened. There was definitely just like it felt like because they didn't necessarily care all that much, or because it was so like committee written, that they could really just kind of go a little bit wild with some of the stuff that they were doing there. So like the communist ants, like that joke isn't really all that funny when I think about it now, but it was a lot of fun in the theaters. Like it just hit me that these ants have been this kind of Chekhov's gun sort of like in previous Ant-Man movies. They're this there's this really important mechanic, and then they're just kind of gone for most of the movie, and so you're like, obviously they're going to show back up, obviously they're going to be important again, and they end up being important in a way that was just completely ridiculous. The communist ants in Ant-Man 3 I thought were kind of funny. I also kind of liked MODOK a little bit. I understand why people disliked that character, because he definitely goes against what I think a lot of the kind of comics fans were probably into, but I'm not somebody who treats the source material as totally sacred. I'm totally fine with things being kind of dumb and ridiculous and just having a little bit of fun with that, and so making the main villain of the first movie just suddenly this off the walls, ridiculous, stupid character, I thought was kind of fun. Definitely felt like it was kind of an improvement from the second one, but that's mostly just because the second one feels kind of, it's just like it sticks nothing in my mind. Meanwhile, like the one moment where you see Scott's like love for his daughter come through in the like magic quantum realm business stuff, I thought was just kind of cute and kind of special. And I'm kind of a sucker for movies that use their weird sci-fi mechanics to actually do something, tell you something about the characters. And so seeing how much he loves his daughter come through in all of these like disparate alternate versions of himself converging into one specifically because he loves his daughter, I thought that was cool. Transformers was one that I was kind of excited to see, just because I felt like Bumblebee was for the most part a step up over a lot of the Transformers BS that had been coming out for a little while there. Definitely wasn't as good as I remembered it. I rewatched Bumblebee to watch Rise of the Beasts. Like the designs a lot in Rise of the Beasts. I definitely feel like the Gen 1 translated into the live action works really, really well and is a lot of fun. I liked the designs, the CGI in general in Transformers 2007. So it's not as though this is necessarily better than that, but I thought it was fun, and it was nice to see like a fine Transformers movie after years of garbage. And honestly, they need to do more. Two things they need to do more of. One is giving Optimus Prime something to do, making him an actual character instead of just the generic war criminal, which is what he was in the second through fifth ones. He was only an interesting character in the first one. So giving him a character arc, fantastic. They need to do more of that. And they also need to do more giving the robot characters like weird, special, fun powers, because that was something that was just annoyingly absent, I felt like, in a lot of the other live action stuff. And it's like, okay, if you're going to make a movie about robots that turn into cars, make it fun, make it entertaining to watch, make it exciting. And so I think by giving, by leading into weird, fun powers and stuff, it would be kind of cool. Honestly, they're definitely not going to do this, but if they went for the straight up, like all of the Gen 1 cartoons where the Decepticons could just like fly, like I wouldn't even mind that. Like that was such a funny, like just a silly little like cartoony thing that I kind of enjoyed. I know they're not going to do that, and I know they're going to keep writing terrible human characters that don't really add much to the story when they could. I mean, this was definitely a step up for the most part in terms of human characters, except for the fact that his backstory was just like so boilerplate, so generic, so basic, when it could have been so much more than that. But it wasn't, and that's unfortunate. And then the climax, I had a lot of issues with the climax. I liked the way that they did the one shot, like following you through the battlefield. It's one of those things that a lot of movies are copying right now, and I understand why people might see that and be like, oh, well, okay, everyone's doing it. That kind of makes it a little bit stale, but I think it's mostly a good thing. Like, it's just a cool thing for movies to be copying and doing more and more of, because it's cool. Like, it's cool to, and it requires more effort than just shooting a fight scene. That said, the fact that the fight scene was literally just like a gray expanse is super, super lame. And then the finale, the final battle moment or whatever, they did the cliche where a character is about to die and somebody saves them at the last moment. And already I was kind of like taken out of it a little bit by that. But then they do it a second freaking time where then those characters are about to die and then someone else shows up and saves them. And it's like, oh, like come up with something original, for the love of God, please. That was not it. But regardless, the rest of the movie had some good stuff. I enjoyed the music. I don't remember the score as much as I have in previous movies. The Transformers 2007 score is fantastic, and I think Steve Jablonsky did a fantastic job, and so I definitely would love to see more writing, more music on par with that. But at the moment, we're not necessarily quite there. All right. Review on the FNAF movie. I thought the FNAF movie was kind of fine. I wasn't planning on seeing it, and then a friend just really wanted to. Apparently that was the only game that she ever learned lore for, and so I was like, whatever, like, I'm not doing anything right now, like, fine, we can go and see FNAF movie. I thought the sets were fun. I thought the costumes were fun. Apparently they didn't look as good when they were moving. I'm not very good at noticing when things look bad. I'm mostly good at noticing when they look really, really good, and for the most part, I thought they looked really, really good. They were like kind of menacing when they needed to be, and it also, like, the FNAF movie just didn't feel like something I'd seen before, rehashed necessarily. Like, the main character, Josh Hutcherson's backstory was so ridiculous and out there, and his like weird obsession with dream magic to like remember the guy who kidnapped his brother was so weird and kind of nonsensical that I was kind of here for it, because it was something like I haven't seen somebody try and do that before. I also don't watch much in this genre. I've been trying to kind of catch up a little bit on some of the really famous horror films that I assume this is drawing from, even if it's a children's movie. But it even still didn't feel like a huge rehashing. That said, the villain, William Afton, whatever, it was just lame. Like, he just kind of came out of nowhere, and I didn't really feel any sort of connection to him. And it's not like he was necessarily because he's like super evil or anything like that, without having any redeeming qualities. I'm fine with that. In fact, I like the main antagonist of Guardians of the Galaxy is like that, and I felt more connection to him. It was just that he didn't feel like he had anything to do. But okay, Blue Beetle had a lot of heart, definitely felt a little bit like a rehash of stuff that I'd seen before, but main character was charismatic enough. The biggest issues that I had with this film, beyond the fact that it felt like he just really was uncreative with the superhero suit that he was given, is Susan Sarandon's character, her villain. I just, like, I could not get on board with. She just felt so lame. And so I don't know. I just didn't like her performance. Like, beyond the fact that she was generic corporate bad guy number 77, I just didn't like her performance. It, from what I'm aware of, is pretty lame that she got, I say lame, pretty awful that she was apparently dropped by her talent agency for supporting Palestine. Not a fan of that happening, unless there's some other behind the scenes thing that I'm not aware of. But I think that's messed up. Well, yeah, didn't really care all that much for her character, but I don't know. Like Jaime as a character, I think was pretty fun to follow, and he felt like a scrappy underdog that you wanted to see succeed. Oh, and then another thing I didn't like is the Suit's arc. Like the Suit just is like, oh yeah, I'm totally fine killing humans, and then Jaime's like, no, don't do that. And then at the end of the movie, it's like, oh, I've changed my mind, and it's like, since when? Why? How? Okay, whatever, dude. And then Barbie, I mean, everybody's talked about Barbie. Barbie was really good. So I guess, I already talked about it and then had to drop that. So I will just give the kind of the rundown of the things that I liked a little bit faster. One, obviously, I liked Ryan Gosling's performance. I liked both of the leads a lot. Ryan Gosling, though, did a fantastic job as Ken. Loved what he was doing with it, and he was pretty funny and entertaining. Really liked the sets. I mean, like everybody liked the sets. Of course I liked the sets. And then the music was it wasn't something that I necessarily liked, in that it wasn't my kind of music, but it fit with the story, fit with what they were doing, and I appreciated that. Things I didn't like, the character of Ruth Handler, I think just sucked. They tried to act like she was giving this wise, like sage advice and whatever, and she just wasn't. Like the advice she gave sucked. When our main character comes in and she's like, hey, I've been having a horrible experience in the human world, and like we've literally seen her get sexually harassed and abused and treated like garbage, and Ray Perlman's character is like, oh well, sometimes life sucks and that's what makes things so flavorful. I was like, dude, no. Like, I understand what they're going for. Like, yeah, bad things happening to you can be a valuable experience and can teach you things and can kind of be an important part of life, but this ain't it. That's not what that was. I think that's not what that was. And then she gave some dumb advice in the finale, I say finale as though this is a TV show. It gave some dumb advice at the very end that I also didn't really care for that much, but whatever. Oh, and then besides that, I wanted to kind of mention a mild workshopping of that stupid beach off joke towards the beginning. It was something that Ben Shapiro mentioned in his really otherwise stupid review of the film, and that was like it was a dumb adult joke to begin with, like, oh haha, beach off sounds like beat off, like it's not that funny, but like whatever, as a joke that only adults get, if it wasn't delivered in the way it was, could have been like a mild, like, breathe air out your nose moment, and I think what they needed to do for that, to make that joke actually functional, is not keep repeating it over and over again. If they had just like set up that a beach off was a thing that happens, like, oh, we're going to have a beach off, and then the punchline was, I'm gonna beach you off, that would have been like entertaining, like, okay, that I would have found kind of funny. I put a weird amount of effort into, not that much, but a weird amount of effort nonetheless, into fixing a dumb sex joke in a movie, but regardless, there you go. That's how I would have fixed it. It was a good movie that had some dumb stuff, but definitely in the A tier. Okay, Guardians of the Galaxy. I was worried about this one, worried it was going to suck. I felt burned by Thor 4. I was worried that this was going to be just kind of a quality rehashing of that, especially since the Guardians of the Galaxy literally appeared in that film and it sucked. But it didn't. Guardians 3 was pretty fantastic. I would give it like solidly A tier, above Barbie in terms of quality. I think most of the characters were handled really well. I felt like there was some payoff to a lot of the BS that Drax has been put through for most of these films, which is really, really good to see. He felt like he was just been kind of a joke character for a long time, and so seeing him actually have something to do and actually getting a feel for, oh yeah, this is why we care about this guy so much, was really fantastic. He had a couple moments in Guardians 2 and like a little bit in 1, but I don't know, there just wasn't enough up until this was great. Loved that. The villain was fun. He was just straight evil and performed really well and was present throughout the whole movie, even if it was mostly in background scenes. So again, that was great. And then I think at the end, like that reveal with his face, when you see it underneath, it was just like a cool visual way to show how much he, like, why he feels so strongly about Rocket Raccoon as as kind of a personal antagonist. Like, obviously that's not literally why, there were a lot of other reasons why he hated him, but like seeing, realizing his face has been fake this whole time, and like it just like it was a good visual metaphor, I guess. I'm not a huge like Lego mock builder person myself, but I did do a little like desktopper version of the final battle. Ignore the presence of Adam Warlock here. because I just I like that and I wanted it as a little desktopper. Although speaking of Adam Warlock, he was definitely underused in this. I really liked Will Poulter's performance. I liked everything they did do with him. They just needed to do more with him, and they did not. There were definitely a lot of opportunities for more. Oh, and then actually one of the other things, because I didn't mention this when I was originally doing the stream, before I fixed it, that animals as disposable CGI villains, I think wasn't very well implemented, because we, at the beginning of the movie, we're told, or we're shown that like all of these animals that the High Evolutionary has been raising have been abused, have been treated horribly. And so when we then see them being just like generically the bad guys, like suddenly a bunch of them are evil, it's like I felt like there was something to do there. There was some sort of like a solemn, like, okay, maybe we do have to kill some of these animals, but like that should be something that the characters felt conflicted about, and it just didn't feel like they did. Kind of reminds me of how they handled like Finn in Rise of Skywalker, where he's supposed to be an ex-stormtrooper. He's supposed to feel conflicted about killing stormtroopers, but then they just like have him cheering and killing them off, and it's like if you're gonna make that a part of your movie, if you're gonna make sympathetic antagonists like that, do something more with it than they did. So that was a negative, definitely. A movie I don't have very much negative to say about is Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. So I'm not even gonna pretend like this is going anywhere except for S tier. Like obviously, Across the Spider-Verse was fantastic. I felt like the score was in a lot of ways a step up from the first Spider-Verse. The soundtrack maybe not as much, like the actual music that we're listening to, but everything other than that like felt like a step up. The animation was gorgeous. I took everything that was good about the first movie and dialed it up to 1,000. Beautiful, wonderful. Could not have done it better myself. Did I just say couldn't have done it better myself about animation? And I am terrible at animation. In fact, in my PragerU video that is dropping this Thanksgiving, whether this is released afterwards and you've already seen it or have had the option to see it or not, like a whole stupid little visual bit is reliant on the fact that I can't animate for shit. But yeah, no, beautiful, excellent color theory. Like they really did use the fact that film is a visual medium to tell us something really meaningful and thoughtful about these characters, and I loved it, and it was a great experience. Let's see here. Other than that, a couple of negatives that, or well, I guess just one, because I've already talked about the mild step down I felt in some of the soundtrack. Peter B. Parker definitely felt like he could have been done better. The first interaction that Miles has with him, he felt, I mean, obviously he's excited, right? Like he's just had his first child, and that's a big deal to him, but it felt like it just lacking in social awareness just a little bit too much. Obviously he's going to be lacking in social awareness just like a little bit, because he's so excited about the fact that he's seeing Miles again for the first time, and because he's got his baby. Like, okay, fine, but like, okay, read the room a little bit, buddy. And I don't know, that delivery just could have been better. It wasn't as funny as I think they wanted it to be.
One kind of interesting or funny, depending on how you look at it, thing about my experience watching this movie was that the theater that I was in was probably like 2 seconds away from having a freaking riot, because we were watching the film and we're about 20 minutes in, and then the color just kind of disappeared. Like, it doesn't turn black and white. It turns into like a green scale. I don't know what you would call that. Obviously something wrong with the projector. And so you get a bunch of like audible groans, and people are upset, and people are shuffling around. Somebody comes into the theater to be like, we're about to fix everything, please don't worry, it's just gonna be like 5 minutes, and people are upset and whatever about that. I'm mostly just sitting there laughing, because I mean, I enjoy being there for dumb stuff that kind of ruins the experience, just because looking back, then I have more of a story to tell than just, oh, I was at Spider-Man, but I had, we're sitting there, and then finally they get it fixed. The whole thing has to like reboot or whatever, and then they get it back on, and the movie's running, and I think it happened a second time, and again they had to reboot it and start it over and whatever again. People, grown, upset, blah blah blah. But then it happened a third time, but it happened, I think, during a transition, because I didn't notice it until a little while into the film. Hey, I think that color grading thing has happened again, because I was just watching it and assuming like, oh, this is just a this is just a weird quirk of this universe that they're in, is that it looks this way. And then it started popping up in all of the other ones. And so I was like, oh, okay, no, that's definitely not how this is supposed to look. And they never ended up fixing that. And I thought it was kind of funny that time they were like, we give up. There's nothing we can do about this. So I don't know. Hope they got that figured out. That theater, I've never had a negative experience in otherwise, but it was kind of funny that it went wrong 3 separate times. And I don't know, the third time, one of the weird things that was going on was so many of the different colors weren't showing up properly, and it wasn't really clear to me like what was causing it, because the red around, or well, okay, I guess some of the reds were showing up totally normally, but then the red that runs down like the like the armpit of Miles's suit was literally just completely black, so it just looked like he was wearing almost an all black suit. You could vaguely make up the spider symbol if you really, really looked at it. And so it made that joke where Peter B. Parker like grabs his arm and is like, "Whoa, are you bleeding out of your armpits?" or something like that. And it made that make absolutely no sense to me, to the point where I assumed I had just misheard it, because that's not what I was seeing. And eventually realized that was why. But a lot of people didn't like that joke anyway, but I feel like I definitely have the best reason to have not laughed at that, was because it made no sense when his armpits were black. What do you mean?
But okay, let's get to our other the other S tier film of this year, Killers of the Flower Moon. This movie ruined my day. I went into it knowing basically nothing except for vaguely what it was going to be about, because I wanted to experience it for the first time myself. And I'm glad I did, for sure, because this movie was fantastic. Not in that it was fun to watch. I mean, there were evidently parts of it that were fun to watch, but just in how haunting it was. I'm definitely going to spoil it. I mean, it's based off of a historical event. I'm just kind of go off a little bit about this movie because there was so much going on there. For starters, the way that they just revealed that our main character was in on all of the murders, like to the extent that he was, just felt so painfully obvious in a way that like, okay, you obviously know that he's going to be involved in all of this from his first conversation with Robert De Niro and whatever, but then you just like show him robbing an Osage person, I think armed. I don't even, right, like, and it was like, oh, of course he's a gigantic piece of shit. Like, everybody here is. Like, there was this existential horror that I felt imagining being in that situation and knowing that, like, you could trust no one, and that, even, Robert De Niro, this guy who's been pretending to be, like, a friend of the community here, like, is a complete liar and a complete hack, and is literally involved in killing people for their money. And then kind of another kind of interesting an interesting element in this film was the way that violence was portrayed was so aggressively unsatisfying in a way that I think was exactly how it needed to be to make this film work. Because one of the fears that I had kind of going into this is like, okay, you're going to be portraying a bunch of murders and stuff like that. And in a lot of movies, violence can be kind of like part of the fun, part of the excitement, part of the entertainment. It's like, oh, you're seeing a bunch of awful stuff happening, but like it's performed really interestingly, or it's kind of cool, or it's whatever. And like in this, like every time that something violent happened, I was so uncomfortable. I did not feel like I felt in that, the one-shot fight scene in Guardians of the Galaxy where like, like you're here for the ride, you're having a lot of fun. Like I felt like, oh God, I'm watching horrible things happen to real people, and it's sickening, and yeah, exactly what it needed to be on that front. And then another bit that I know the person I watched it with, I remember her responding like, oh, this is kind of weird. We haven't talked about it since then, so I have no idea. But was kind of the final framing device where it was like this radio show, and this movie you've been watching the entire time is now being told like the pre-internet version of a true crime podcast. And I felt like that was a really good way to kind of end off the story, because it kind of reminds everybody watching that, oh yeah, this is kind of how we talk about a lot of these events, is like it's just Like, it's just kind of an interesting footnote to history, and it, like, because of all of the things that you've seen, that's really uncomfortable. That's really weird. Like, no, this isn't just some, just how things are sometimes. Oh yeah, sometimes bad stuff happens. Like, this was awful. And this was like this systemic, exactly what you could have predicted if you were like observing the way that settlers, that the United States treated indigenous nations at the time. Like it was so painfully systemic that telling it like any old other true crime story feels like sickening, feels so freaking wrong. And so it was like, it was very effective in that way, almost anticlimactic, but in a way that like really, really drove the point home in a way that I was worried they weren't necessarily going to be able to do. In terms of that, like, okay, yeah, maybe I probably should put it above Spider-Man. Oh, can I move things around? No, yeah. But like, I Spider-Man was fun. Spider-Man, like, I want to rewatch. Killers of the Flower Moon made me really sad, and so I'm going to put it where it's at right now. Let's see here. Okay, another movie that ruined my day was Oppenheimer. I did Barbenheimer with a friend of mine, and we made the horrendous mistake of seeing Barbie first, and that was a decision that I regret to this day, instead of having Barbie as kind of a palate cleanser. Oppenheimer in a lot of ways felt like a film that was made for me, and that it was like, I definitely have a lot of like existential, I'm gonna sound like such a fucking dweeb saying this, but I definitely have like a lot of existential angst about the fact that humans have found a way to literally destroy our entire species in a matter of hours. Oh wow, I like Fallout, surprise. And so seeing that through the lens of a character that is ostensibly the person who created, or at least who pioneered, that means of destroying everything, was painful, and really, again, drove home kind of the point that they were getting at. The final visual of this film was perfect in how upsetting it was. That said, there were definitely issues that I had with the framing. First of all, I think outside of the film, like Christopher Nolan saying, "Oh, this film is shot where all of the color scenes are subjective and are from Oppenheimer's perspective, and then all of the black and white scenes are meant to be, how things really were." Didn't really come through as much in the movie in the way that I would have liked it to. The subjectivity just did not feel as well delivered as I think he wanted it to. I definitely felt while watching it like, oh, this is how he wants us to view these events, rather than this is how he wants us to think that Oppenheimer viewed these events. And so as a result, I think it just kind of lionized the character a little bit more than I think it meant to. That said, watching it with that understanding, I think it works really well, because you see the way that he viewed his wife as almost unimportant to him, as though like his work is everything that matters, and as though her concerns were irrelevant. Like that, when you look at it through the lens of, oh, this is his subjective experience and it's kind of messed up, that's fantastic. That tells us a lot about this guy and the way that he views the people around him. From that perspective, it was cool. And then I guess another thing that I didn't really appreciate is, okay, you're doing a movie about the existential angst that people feel about the atomic bomb, and they did not, in my opinion, do enough with the fact that that's something that a bunch of people already have felt. Like, hundreds of thousands of people literally were killed by the atomic bomb. That's not something to gloss over, which I felt like they did. And I don't know exactly how they could have handled that better. And I know this is based off of a novel, and I don't know how the novel handles it. But like, I'm watching this and I'm feeling like the United States unjustly already did this to a bunch of people. And you obviously, like, this film is so invested in how awful that is. It already happened, buddy. Like do more with that, other than just showing Oppenheimer being upset about the fact that it's going to destroy a bunch of other people, And there were moments in this that I think really did kind of nail that home. That conversation with, I can't remember, the general, it wasn't Matt Damon's character. It was, I don't know, some other recognizable Hollywood white guy. being like not wanting to bomb Kyoto because he and his wife honeymooned there, like that definitely drove home at least like a portion of that, like really did sell how meaningless a lot of these decisions were. I just would have liked to see more. Although that said, I do really like throughout the film, spoilers for a sound effect, I guess, you hear that banging kind of like almost applause or like stomping noise. I mean, that's what it is. And at first, like, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, oh, it's just a weird audio effect that's, it's kind of cool, like it's worthwhile, like it's entertaining and scary, like it definitely drives that home. But the reveal that was the applause after the first bomb was dropped, and like he's listening to this small crowd of people like stomping and cheering for him as he's reflecting on how awful what just happened was, like that was really strong, and that I think was a really good kind of reveal, that it was subtle enough that you didn't need to, it was subtle enough that you didn't need to feel like you were being told exactly how to feel about this. Like it delivered that in a really effective way. So that said, I'm definitely putting this as an A tier film. I guess I probably have to put it again above Guardians of the Galaxy. I definitely would rewatch Guardians of the Galaxy sooner than I'd rewatch Oppenheimer. But I mean, that's because Guardians of the Galaxy, like it was a lot of fun. In fact, I have rewatched that and I loved it a whole lot.
Hey, so after I streamed this, I ended up going and seeing the new Hunger Games movie, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I don't know. I couldn't find it on here, although I could just not be looking very closely. So I added in an image for it here. And I guess I should probably talk about how I felt about that movie. And as someone who, I read the Hunger Games books when I was younger, and I enjoyed them a fair bit, and I saw at least 2 of the movies. I didn't feel super strongly one way or another about how this movie was going to be. I figured it could go either way. And I think for the most part, I ended up kind of liking it. It definitely had several elements of it that were not fantastic. Like they were really trying to do, like, sell this origin story of this villain from the original series, which I couldn't remember much about him anyway. And so watching it, I felt like there were so many things they were clearly going for that worked really well for the most part in the first 2 acts of the film, and then by the 3rd act it just got really messy and confusing. And it wasn't really clear to me what this character's motivation was, because it would feel like from scene to scene, he would be acting completely differently, but it wasn't in a way that felt like the writers were aware of the fact that he was acting differently and that needed an explanation. Like it didn't feel like he was being duplicitous. It just felt like his motivations were changing. That said, in terms of performance, I think the lead actor, whose name I can't remember anymore, did a fantastic job. He was really charismatic. I loved the costumes in this. I don't particularly remember the costumes from the original films, other than that some of them were pretty ostentatious and ridiculous. And honestly, one of the things, like, obviously I will never forgive the Hunger Games for kicking off this genre of YA fiction. That's a joke mostly. But one thing that I did always appreciate about this series was that for the most part, it did feel like it had some sort of identity to itself. One of the other big YA dystopian fiction series, Divergent, never really felt that way. I remember watching it and just, like, it never made sense to me why the authoritarian government in that series was doing the things that they were doing, because it kind of just felt like, oh, this was set up for a YA story and nobody really thought about what it would actually mean. Whereas in the Hunger Games, I could totally buy that all of this ridiculous shit is going on because just like a few people have a ridiculously big ego and really like stupid nonsense showmanship, and that was kind of how I felt watching this, because this stuff does not make sense for an authoritarian government to be doing, but nonetheless it does make sense for crazy mad scientist lady to be doing. And so I would probably give this one, put this in the B tier. I recognize that this is kind of a silly metric for analyzing movies, but it's got I'm kind of torn. I feel like a lot of this was more polished than Blue Beetle was, but it didn't feel like it quite had the same kind of soul to it. I guess I'll put it there. It was an entertaining movie to watch. It was one that felt like you felt how long it was, but at the same time, I kind of enjoyed that. Like I felt like I was following a story that never got boring, even if towards the end it got rushed in a way that I remember seeing one reviewer commenting like this probably should have been a miniseries, and that just kind of seemed to be one of the patterns that we're starting to run into right now, is where they're making miniseries out of freaking everything. Disney Plus has kind of ruined media in that way. But then occasionally you get stuff that really should be that, and it's just not. And yeah, I could definitely see why this would have worked better as, like a 5 or 6 episode story, so that you could really flesh out some of the character relationships a bit better.
So that gets to the end of the movies that I've seen this year. Okay, cool. I mean, you can see it's a bit of a top heavy list. That's kind of nice. But I did want to talk a little bit about the Marvels and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even though I haven't seen them. And that's because my impression of kind of the response to the Marvels is that it wasn't all that good. I'm not really taking that from the film critics that I don't trust, the complete anti-woke, loser, whatever people. But even besides them, it hasn't sounded like it was really good. And it's really opened my eyes a little bit to how wasted Brie Larson is as an actress in the MCU, because she is a very good actress. I mean, if you've seen her in Community, she was the only good thing about season 4 of that show, and she's pretty charismatic and fun in that. But I recently watched her in the A24 film Room, not Tommy Wiseau's The Room, starring Brie Larson and I don't remember the child actor's name, Jacob something. She does a fucking fantastic job in that movie. That was, I think, probably the first film that I have teared up at in a very long time. There might be another one, but it was haunting how well done, or how good she was in that movie. And so seeing she's just not given very much to do in the MCU. Carol Danvers is a character that could be really interesting, but just hasn't been thus far, and that really sucks. She's just I didn't like in the first Captain Marvel movie. It totally just felt like her character didn't really have an arc. She just went from being evil space Nazi to good person over the course of one conversation. That was really lame and dumb and could have been better. So yeah, that's all I had to really say about the Marvels. Although from the trailers, I did think that the mechanic that the film was based off of, that they switch places when they use their powers, sounded really cool. So I don't know, when I eventually see it, hopefully I'll at least have fun with it. And then the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles bit, I thought before going into this list that that Puss in Boots: The Last Wish had come out this year. It didn't. It came out last year. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is, I think, kind of the latest in films that are clearly animated, inspired by Across the Spiderverse or Into the Spiderverse. And this is another thing, the one-shot fight scenes, where I am all for it. I think the fact that Into the Spider-Verse was a comic book movie, and the animation was so deeply tied to that, meant that other movies couldn't just copy its bit. They couldn't just ape doing the comic book style bit, right? That would be weird in Puss in Boots. That would have been weird in, I assume, in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So instead, they have to what it seems like studios are taking from this is not, oh, comic book animation is popular. It's really, really good, well-directed, well-designed animation in a style that's fitting for your genre is really good. And so if that's the bit that everybody's aping, I am all for it. I am a huge fan. I love that. It is beautiful. And so the designs in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were really good. I haven't seen the movie. No idea. The comedy did not look very good from the trailers that I saw. But if that's the direction that we are going, please more. Please, animation is cinema, all of the talking points, let me regurgitate them to you. So good. I'm glad that that's what people are taking from this. Requires putting in effort. Oh my god. But yeah, I guess that's all I really had to talk about. It's unfortunate that this stream got all messed up, but I did fix my audio, so that's nice. If you like this sort of thing, definitely you should be liking and subscribing. I would really appreciate you doing that. That'd be epic and cool. But besides that, thanks for watching as far as you have. I will probably at some point talk about all of the shows that have come out this year. I guess I'm gonna have to look back and see what shows I've seen, because off the top of my head I actually can't think of that many. But I do like talking about media, and I like live streaming stuff, and I like talking about, I already said that. Yeah. Thank you for watching this.